We will tear down statues of evil and throw them in the harbour. We'll demand change and denounce racism loud and clear. But real lasting change means more than overthrowing the symbols of racism in Bristol. We need to also understand the foundations of racism that our city was built on. We need to understand why they are so painful to this day. You see, there is blood on the bricks of Bristol. Merchants started trading slaves in 1698. From this point on, around 500,000 Africans were carried into slavery on Bristol boats. Although men like Colston led the trade, ordinary citizens in Bristol provided cash and goods to buy African slaves. Bristolians were happy to be involved in slavery if it meant getting rich. Between 1730 and 1745, Bristol was the leading slaving port. About 40% of British trade was made up by Bristol's slaving voyages in this period. The slave traders' family and friends became rich too. They became plantation owners in the West Indies or sold slave-produced Caribbean products in the UK. Factories across Bristol produced sugar, tobacco and chocolate, generating huge wealth. In return, Bristol supplied these British colonies with goods to keep the plantations going. Guns, food, clothes for the slaves, and farming equipment all came from our harbour. Even long after the slave trade was abolished in 1834, the scars are still all over Bristol. Walk around our city and you'll see Guinea Street, Jamaica Street, Codrington Place, Tyndall's Park, and many more commemorating slavery. The names of Colston, Wills, Goldney, and Elton are etched into our architecture. Bristol's slave traders received well over £2 billion in today's money in compensation for the loss of their enslaved property. Only recently did we pay the last reparation. There is blood on our bricks. But it isn't just slavery that oppressed the black community. In the 1950s, the Windrush generation were asked to come from the Caribbean and rebuild our city after World War II. They were met with racism, and most could only find housing in Easton and St. Paul's, which were little more than ruins after being bombed. In 2012, many people from the Windrush generation were thrown into detention centres, and some were deported, being forced to leave Bristol, the city they helped rebuild. In the 60s, the Bristol Omnibus Company only employed white drivers and conductors. A black-led bus boycott in 1963 challenged this discrimination and helped to change the national laws. By the 80s, race relations in the city reached a boiling point, and violent riots broke out in St. Paul's.
Riot-equipped police are descending on the West Indian community in Bristol tonight to try and quell what's probably the worst street violence the city has ever seen.
We love Bristol. It's creative and independent, it's loud and it's beautiful. It's St. Paul's Carnival and the Suspension Bridge. But scars of racism are all over Bristol. The foundations of the city were built by slaves. There is blood on our bricks.
I've always been proud to live in Bristol, to work here, to study here, and to be considered a part of the independent voice that Bristol is famed to have. But to be honest, I didn't really realize the slavery links that the city had until about 2016, which was 2 years into living here and 2 years into university. I'd always been taught about slavery by my schools, by my parents, by my grandparents. And so I was fortunate to have grown up in that conversation. But it wasn't told to me from a place of sadness or anger, but as a thing that I had to overcome, that I had to change the narrative of. And so living here with that responsibility is hard, because you can't be seen or you can't make a mistake. That could directly impact the chance that somebody else has to come here, to learn, to live a better life. And so that's a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I think the general responsibility is for us to make a mark in society, for us to push for the spaces to be created for us, for us to make our voices heard. And as you've seen over the past weeks, years, we keep on doing that. We've never stopped. But what's changing and what needs to keep on changing is the world's willingness to listen. We will keep speaking, we will keep showing up in spaces that weren't built for us, weren't created for us. But moving forward, there needs to be the willingness from the people on the outside looking in to listen, to keep on opening up those spaces, to keep making us feel welcome. And I think that's the only way that the world is going to change.
We're fighting against hundreds of years of oppression and racism. We're fighting generations of evil. We're fighting ingrained racial inequality in our city today. To overcome forces so formidable, we need something powerful. We need the power of the gospel. The love of Jesus that changes hearts and brings freedom. The light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. So, we're making a stand. When you live in a city built on slavery, it's not enough to be passive. It's not someone else's problem, it's our problem. This is our fight. We say sorry for when we've profited from Bristol's past. As a church, we exist so that everyone finds the love of Jesus. Only then can we see freedom and justice.